Good afternoon, Matt.
Good to see you, Assis. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast today, Matt. And to the audience, this is Matt Matheson, and he's a speaking coach. And we've just had a speaking coach session with Matt. So Matt led me through a speaking session, and we're doing a live reflection of that session off the back of what we just did. Really want to focus this conversation around loneliness and the ability to connect with who you want to connect with speaking. We're going to unpack that today in this conversation. Yeah, to start with, introducing you into the room, Matt, and yeah, I'd love for you to share, what is it that you do?
Yeah, cool. It's such a great topic. So, thanks for the lead in on that. My name, of course, as you said, is Matt Matheson, known as the speaking coach. So it's my mission to help people find their voice in high pressured situations. And 8 or 9 times out of 10, that shows up as public speaking in some shape or form. So it's my life's work, really, I guess, now to help people remain authentic and say what they want to say when it matters most to them, really. And I do that through coaching, training, and retreats, working from one-to-one right the way through to corporates. And my values, which kind of guide what I do, are to challenge, empower, and care. And that's me and what I do.
Just to speak into that and coming in through my own experience of speaking. Growing up, I really struggled with speaking and articulating what I've got to say, and in the form of a stammer. And there were certain experiences that led to really amplify that stammer. And through my adult life, I've taken time in talking therapy, and I've participated in sharing circles, and I've learned how to sing, and done all these different practices. But then I've never actually just sat down with a speaking coach and just actually learning the principles. So what we did today was a first for me. And I want to just unpack what we just did through the speaking session just now. But before that, just tying it back to the initial theme of loneliness. And if you can't say what you've got to say, and you've got all these amazing thoughts in your mind, but you can't bring them out, then it's difficult to really fully connect with someone. The question I've got for you, Matt, is, how did you arrive at what you do?
Oh, that's a good question. How did I arrive at what I do? So I've been doing this work now for, in some shape or form, probably about 13 or 14 years, I would say. And as with all life changes, it's a mixture of design and happy accident, I think. So cut a long story short, about 12 years ago, there's kind of 3 emerging threads in my life that kind of came together. One was discovering improvisation, and particularly looking at the background of it, which is as a teaching framework for creative self-expression and confidence, rather than comedy, which is what it's known for now. The second was moving into a space of coaching and facilitation and just doing that at the agency I was working with. And then the third was, I guess, like a little bit of just looking at what my own patterns were, particularly around what historically was like maybe a subconscious desire to kind of fix or help. And over a period of time, kind of bringing all those 3 to light into a way that I can then kind of service and support clients through that, really. So I get to meet that need of wanting to go out and do good in the world in a conscious way, whilst also channeling the things that I love about me and the way I work. Like, I realized that I didn't want to work with process and projects that was in my background. I wanted to work with people. I realized that the principles of improvisation that I hold dear are so valuable to people communicating. And I think in my own life, knowing that there's been times where I have felt that I haven't been able to speak up, and I've gone through a process of learning how to kind of find my voice, both formally on stage, as well as in the one-to-one environment. I just kind of thought, okay, right, I want to kind of bring this out to the world, really. And that started with running workshops around creativity and collaboration. But the one thing that kept coming to me was support with public speaking. So then about 7 years ago, I then kind of doubled down on that as a core offering all around communication. And from there, it just kind of took off, really. That's the origin story, if you like, of how I work.
I love the way that you've blended your passions into what you've created, and also like the pains that you felt in different areas that have then led you to this path. And I really want to come into the session that we did today because you've got a framework now, right? And we really focused in on one of those pieces.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear, just in your words, like how you describe that and the one that we focused on today.
Yeah, so today we picked off the first pillar of my 6-point speaker program. And the program itself is 6 steps that increase 2 things: confidence, inner confidence in your own voice, and then competence, so skills in order to express that voice. And we kind of went straight at the beginning, didn't we? We looked at how to prepare and rehearse. So the pillar was broke into 2 sections. So the first is giving you a framework to prepare with, really, that brings online your body, your voice, and your content all at the same time. And then the second was looking at how to rehearse and how to shape our content through speech rather than thinking. And we did both today, didn't we? So I kind of took you through the process, and then I put you in the hot seat and had you rehearsing some content that we shaped.
It was really amazing to go through that process, because just in that small way of breaking it down, I felt that we went through some real like emotional pieces, but also some really practical applications of it. And the feeling that was coming through me as we were doing it was I kind of felt like we were in like a swimming lesson.
Okay.
Of being a kid,
Yeah. I like that. I've not had that before. That's a good one.
Because it was like, I'll speak more to the earlier part, but when we were doing the practicing piece, and you were saying, so share like who you are, what you do, and why you're good at it, and tell me in a minute. And we did it once, and then you paused and said, okay, give me some feedback, and we did it again, and we did it again, and each time it was like the potter's wheel analogy that you used. And I really like that, because it was really sort of like, okay, cool, like we've only got these 7 minutes, but within those 7 minutes, like it was just a constant repetition. And I really like the way that you turned speaking into a sport, and not just this thing of just letting it out. And some of the real key takeaways that came through for me was this whole idea of you kind of felt like driving a car. And even now I'm in the feeling of it as I'm speaking, and I can feel myself really leaning into it and slowing down and choosing which gear that I'm going into. And going further into that, there's this whole thing of when you're driving a car, you might be parked at home, and you might have another car in the garage beside you, and that's almost like your family or where you live. And then you're driving down a busy road, and there's communication there between these different cars. Or you might be driving down a country lane or somewhere that you might want to go on a holiday, and there's a different way that you drive there. And it kind of relates back to speaking, because like public speaking, I guess in a professional sense, is what you're offering in a professional sense. But I feel like just public speaking, just that in itself is speaking in public.
Yes, definitely. It's I say this to almost every client I have. The name of the game is not to go, right, how do I develop this new skill where I can stand up in front of people and say something a certain way, but it's a new skill that I have to develop that I haven't got. And usually when the kind of brakes come off, if you like, it's when they really presence into the idea that actually what we're looking to do in these formal situations is just to proactively deploy what we do all day, every day without thinking. So there'll be times where you've made someone cry, made someone smile, scared someone, inspired someone, had someone lean in on everything, disgusted someone, commanded a room, but you may not have labeled it as so at the time. And this is what we do as we go through life, through our full range of emotions. And all we're looking to do, just speaking to your point there, is take these moments where you're inspiring or frustrated or whatever it is, and go, okay, how do we just consciously deploy that in a situation where you've got 20 people in front of you or 40 people in front of you? So it's the authentic you that can already do that, rather than thinking I have to learn this new thing. So really aligned on that.
It kind of really comes into, because you broke it down in a really nice way. How do you help people to get those thoughts out of their mind and turn them into words?
Yeah. Conscious action. One of the biggest blocks to speaking your mind is when you don't speak your mind. And that might sound really obvious. But the name of the game is to stop the dialogue just running around up here and find a way to express it. And once we start expressing our thoughts, our intentions, our actions, our message, or whatever it may be, then we start to control it. But the first thing you've got to do is turn the tap on, so it's coming out. And the first time you turn the tap on, it might be messy and it might feel strange. And if we look at the 6 iterations that we just did, the very first time we turned the tap on, if you like, iteration 1, it was a bit like, oh, what am I saying? How's it going to come out, perhaps, But then we start to go, oh, actually, I can choose the pressure of the tap. If I start to slow down, if I start to think of what I'm saying, how do I help people take all these thoughts and theories and whatever and start to express it? The first thing is getting them just to verbalize it, and whatever way that feels. Once we've got that, we have a starting point. And then we have another go and we shape it a bit differently. And then we have another go and we shape it that differently. And the shaping comes through the lenses of time, emotion and feeling, audience, body language. And those are all 3 things that are quite easy to shape a message with. So the first step is just turn the tap on, no matter how messy it is, in a safe environment. And once we start running the water, then we can choose the pressure, we can choose where we squirt it, we can, choose how big the bowl is we want to fill up. Is it a 20-second cup that we're just filling up, or actually are we kind of really, really opening it up so we can, do 20 minutes?
That was the real profound thing with what you did, because or what you do, because linking it back to loneliness, and the opposite of loneliness is feeling connected. And the way that you help to break the thoughts down into what can actually connect, it's really helping someone to break these down into digestible pieces.
Yeah, I really hear you on that. I think that's often the biggest challenge. I think, is like, how do I get this and how do I turn it into something that's digestible? And I think we looked at the rule of 3s. I'd say, right, get your content topics, whatever they look like, and try to break them down into 3 key messages for each chunk. And then once you work it down at something that's simple, and a chunk could be 10 seconds, 20 seconds, all of a sudden it becomes manageable. And it's like one chunk at a time. When we just work on one chunk at a time, we start to feel success. If we try to work on a whole 20 minutes in one go, it feels overwhelming, messy. So I would say it's about breaking it down and simplifying it. And being compassionate with yourself. It's like, communication's messy, and it's okay for stuff to come out messy, and to shape it, and to not try to expect a perfect outcome. And here maybe we can link a little bit back to the kind of loneliness piece here, is where I think sometimes we don't open up and connect with other people because, I think I'm going to rewrite my own language here. Very often people will hold back from opening up to other people, which then fosters connection and would combat loneliness, if you like, because of any number of self-preservation mechanisms they might have, or fears that they may have around how they are seen. Okay, And often this shows up as a fear of being judged in some shape or form. But if we navigate the world through a place of believing that we're going to get judged and or rejected and or not accepted, we're not going to open up to people. And there we can see, okay, how this belief that we may have will then inform how we act, which will then reinforce the belief that we have. So it's like, okay, right, well, how do we turn this tap on and just start getting comfortable saying the things that we want to say? And then can we go out and start trialing it, but speaking to the perfect versus good enough point and being messy? It's not about going out there and speaking perfectly. It's about being true to yourself and speaking in whatever way is authentic to you. And that will engage an audience far more than an inauthentic, polished presentation.
Mm.
There's a presentation I often reference my clients to. It's inside the Everest disaster. You can find it on YouTube. And it is the perfect example of a riveting presentation about, a mountaineer who was in the middle of this Everest disaster. But, he's got a couple of slides and he's in a dark room. There's no polish. He's not a public speaker, but you're hooked.
Mm.
And it's once we let go of the idea of all the conditions having to be perfect, I think at that stage, then we suddenly go, then I'm enough and I can just say it my way. And then, when you speak to me just like you, I've got you, I feel connected. Whereas if you came to me with, I need to project this kind of way, or I don't really want to show myself, then I'm going to pick up on, well, you're not really being yourself, and there's going to be less connection. Less connection, over time with more and more people will lead to more loneliness. And I think that's also the same when you translate that to the stage. If you feel connected to your audience and connected to yourself, you're not going to feel lonely up on stage in front of all these people. But if you're projecting a version of yourself that's not yourself or inauthentic, you're going to feel more lonely in that space.
Yeah, there's so much to pull in from there. But bringing it back down to that whole piece of connecting, when you say the word connecting like that, it actually is two things coming together. And connection requires to fill a space, or there's two things joining, like so two puzzle pieces, or like a phone going into the tripod stand. It's like there needs to be like a clear fit for things. And something that you really helped with today was when you broke down into those three simple questions, and there were some real good points that I kind of came through from that. It's like pauses are okay. Because if you have filler words, it diminishes the quality of your message, which then diminishes what you're trying to connect with. And the more mess there is around, it becomes harder to connect with the thing you're connecting with. And wanting to speak to that, because it is good to allow the mess to come out, but then shaping it in a way where it can actually connect and make it easy to connect with. And that can happen with in a professional setting to find a new client, or it could happen in a family setting to like connect deeper with a relative or with a friend, someone that you're close with, or a romantic connection. And there's different types of ways of delivering a message that can connect in different settings, but it's using the same mechanics that you teach.
I think the mechanics, I think part of the challenge that I see is that there's too much emphasis, particularly on communicating and public speaking, of showing up really differently in these different spaces. So a lot of the training that I see around this is quite boilerplate and templated, where it's like, okay, this is how you have to be in order to be an impactful speaker. But if you're not yourself, you don't feel connected to your own message, and then by extension, people won't connect to you. And that's why I think actually, if we can show up as ourselves to all these situations as much as possible, then we better connect to ourselves in the moment, and then other people better connect with that.
If you put more of yourself in, then you can connect more with that person, right? And something that you really brought out before was this whole thing, you might have these inner critics in your mind, and they might be holding you back. But it's also the compassion piece that you said, because you might have this negative voice saying, oh, don't say this, or that you said that wrong, and then you externalize those thoughts,
Yeah.
and that almost like muddies it.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, definitely. Experts generally agree. So if we label for a moment the inner critic, and let's put it in the pot of imposter syndrome, if you like, and then break those down a bit more. Let's say we have imposter thoughts. Where at different situations we have this: I'm not going to be good enough. I don't belong here. They're going to think this about me. So experts generally agree that about 80% of people have these thought processes, which straight away for me says, okay, that's normal, rather than it being a problem or a syndrome or an illness that you've got, which most people that I meet, when they come to me, they think there's a problem with them because they're doubting themselves and all this, that, and it's actually, no, this is normal. It's when we fail to distinguish between what's just a thought that comes up, they're not going to think I'm very good, versus a core belief, I am not good. When we start believing those thoughts, we start operating from there. That's when it holds us back. And that's where we move into the challenging area of imposter syndrome, because it holds back potential. Because we start believing our inner thought processes, which, due to our own negativity bias, the general view that we are more likely to see what we see as negative versions of ourselves than the positive, then you can see that if we start believing that, then we start fulfilling it, and then we feel less connected to ourselves, and therefore those who we're communicating with will feel less connected to us.
And just to play a little bit more into that, it's you've arrived at what you want to say and leaning it back into what I do with helping people to get really clear on their narrative, so that they've come to me and I really slow them down and they share their story, and creating that container for them to just to let that out, and then together over time we then craft that down into their narrative that then they can then share and spread further into the world. But there's this whole inner piece that comes first, of like going into the depths of who you are and then kind of coming out of that. Like the connecting piece there is, okay, so now, in talking for myself, like I'm really clear on my story. Like I've done the work to really kind of understand where I came from, like got to understand my family, like really understand the people within my family, really get to know like how I connect to those, and through that I've traveled to get different perspectives, lived in different countries, moved back to the UK and set up my business, and like I've had different people in my life coming in and out, like different communities I've been part of, and I've been on this journey, and it really makes sense to me. And going through that process has really helped me to really unravel my own voice and get to know who I am and get to be able to pull out certain pieces. But then still, like when I'm sat in front of someone brand new, or like I'm just meeting them for the first time, I'm almost a bit like, I don't know where to start. And that kind of puts me back into my head to be like, okay, cool. I could going back into my timeline and be like, I could start here, I could start there, I could bring out this. It's like paralysis of choosing what to connect with. But my objective is to connect with the person I'm with in whatever capacity that is. But it's like, how do you then choose the thing to let out and speak? So the thoughts are here, but how do you then kind of choose that one thing to lead with?
I would be tempted to say you don't have to choose one thing. I think what might be showing up there is the idea of trying to get it right, and going, okay, if I don't choose the right thing, is it going to be the right way to connect? And this is where I offer up the metaphor of a football match in the lens of kind of communicating with someone or presenting to people. And there's nothing in the rules of football that says in order for a point to be awarded, it has to come from a striker, and it has to come 90 yards back, and it has to come 30 yards in from the side, and the ball has to go through the legs of the goalie, and it has to go into the top hand left hand corner of the goal. Otherwise, no points are awarded. It doesn't matter who hits that ball on the pitch, and it doesn't matter where on the pitch that comes from. Offside, not including here. If the ball goes in the goal, you got a point. Okay. And I always bring this metaphor back to communication and presenting to say, actually, your goal is not to figure out your job is not to figure out what's the perfect goal, what's the perfect thing to say, what's the right thing to say right now. It's to be relaxed about it and just trust that what comes up is the right thing. And as long as you hit your target, that's a point. And then you suddenly open yourself up to not what's the one thing that I should say, but actually maybe I've got 20 or 30 different things that I could just offer up here, and I'm just going to let one land, and have a more natural, fluid approach where you just go based on what feels right rather than trying to get the perfect thing. The second thing to say to that is sometimes that shows up when there's no rapport established between people, particularly when there's kind of notions of status or hierarchy or power involved. It's like, oh, this person I don't know, I'm not really sure what to say or how to say it, and that strange feeling. And I hate rapport. I hate it as a concept because it says that we have to wait a period of time before we feel comfortable with them. It's like, you can chat to me fine. You're not going, oh, do I say this? Do I say that? It's like, no, there's rapport there. And in the world of improvisation, we say we assume rapport rather than earn it or build it. So how do you do that? I always say to people, if you know you're going to speak to someone and you've got that, oh, I don't really know what to say because, they're paying my bills or they're really important or what, that stuff's clouding it, get a pen and just write down, okay, what would I say if I had a strong relationship with this person? See what comes out your pen and then go with that. And usually that shortcuts that process. And then we talked a little bit about emotional contagion, the emotion that you give off will kind of catch. If you give off something that's a bit more authentic and comfortable, you'll get that back. If you give off being unsure and not really know what you're going to say, that'll land and you'll kind of get that in some sort of response back as well.
Well, the feeling I wanted to bring out from the session and through this podcast was trust. Through the session, I felt I trusted you and I felt like I moved forward.
I enjoyed working with you, and it was nice to do it in a different space as well. Because a lot of my work's online now. I do loads in the room, but the one-to-one in a space like this was really great. And I felt it was a trusting space. We had time to discuss our needs in advance, and you really went with the process. And that was me leading, if you like. Now I'm in your world, in your space here, and I trust you. And really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm a believer that your emotions kind of indicate how connected you are or how lonely you feel, how trusted you are, and I feel grateful and feel connected to you. So I think it's a tick from my point of view. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's a strong trust score from both of us.
Yeah.
And just to say, this has all happened in 90 minutes.
Yeah, we flew through this. But it was the right 90 minutes.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, Matt, it's been incredible to spend this morning/afternoon.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Really cool, man. Really enjoyed the first, I'm going to say, of many conversations, I'm sure.
Yeah. And for you too. And I guess the last plug is there anywhere where the audience can hear more about you?
Easiest places to find me is my website, thespeakingcoach.co.uk, or my Instagram, The Speaking Coach.
Amazing.
And everything, my work, my articles, a lot, it's all on there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Matt,
for
being here today. And thank you so much, audience, for tuning in today. I hope you've, feeling more connected in this podcast.
Yeah, I know I am. Yeah, thank you.